I sound good, right?
Yes, sir. The world's a better place because you're here to join us. My name is Matt Brown and the host of the Productive Conversations podcast. And let's talk about the first round of the college football playoff. It's me and Ryan. Ryan's out in outer space doing something, so we'll just hear him today. And yeah, we're ready to go through the first four games that
Yep.
were more interesting that I would think. What's up, Ryan? How are you?
I'm good. That yeah, they were interesting games. I will say that. I was not expecting this first round to go the
Excellent then. Me neither. Me neither. But either way, we're here. We're gonna have some fun with it, and just want to remind you to like and subscribe to the Productive Conversations podcast on all podcast platforms and YouTube. And don't forget to check out exclusive content regarding the show. Of course, all social media platforms are on Instagram at Productive Conversations Podcast, X at Prod Couple Pod, TikTok at Prod Couple Pod, and we also are on. Excuse me. We are also available on all podcasting platforms and YouTube
Yep.
and Facebook at Productive Conversations. So let's go through all four games right now. Just some quick programming notes. We got on on Wednesday, actually, Christmas Eve will be our final tweet cap of 2025. That will be our timeline. We're going through every single major story in the year 2025 from start to finish, January to December, as we do every year. So we'll do that. That'll be available on Christmas Eve. And then we also have a Week 16 recap of the NFL season. So talk about all games from Week 16. Then back at it, one show next week, which is our Week 17 recap of the NFL season. And we got New Year's. Then after the New Year, January 4th, talk about the second round of the college football playoff. And then also week 18 of the NFL season. Then your first tweet cap of the year will be January 6th, 2025. So pretty good stuff, I would say. And let's rock and roll with that, right, Ryan?
Let's do it. Yeah, no, I'm like I said, that's it's Christmas and that's New Year, of course, but we're still got plenty of content coming out, which is kind of fun. Stressful but fun. So I'm happy.
You said it perfectly, Ryan. All right, so let's go talk about the first round of college football playoff. First, the winners of these play the teams that got the first round bye in number one, Ohio State, number two, Indiana, um, number three. Why am I blanking?
Georgia.
Number four, Texas Tech, and number three, Georgia.
Yep.
So thank you. So let's see who got to get their opportunity to face those teams as we get deeper into the college football playoff. So the first one, Friday night, ESPN. We had two SEC rivals take each other on. We had the University of Alabama take on the University of Oklahoma. The University of Alabama actually defeats Oklahoma. They win by score of 34-24. Alabama overcame a 17-point deficit to win, coming back down from 17 to nothing and ultimately taking the lead in the second half. Ty Simpson comes in. He throws for 232 yards and two touchdowns, leading that rally. And the turnovers were pivotal in this game. A costly interception by Oklahoma was returned for 50 yards for a touchdown by Alabama's Zabian Brown, swinging the momentum. Oklahoma's John Mater still had a strong game with over 300 passing yards and two touchdowns, but that turnover definitely hurt a lot. And then the freshman from Alabama, Latia Brooks, had a breakout performance with a season high in receptions and yardage and scoring two touchdowns. This marks a solid playoff win for Coach DeBoer and set up the quarterfinal match versus number one Indiana at the Rose Bowl New Year's Day. Ryan, I think it's fair to say the way this was broken down ultimately, you had the good game by itself Friday night, and the other three games, well, with the more stakes between Alabama and an A&M, which we'll go through shortly, than the Group 5 games. But this ultimately was extremely compelling, as we mentioned the comeback, as we mentioned breakout performances from young players. And Oklahoma's defense, which was the bread and butter of that team, winds up giving up 34 points at home and really creates a lot of chaos out there in Norman. How do you feel about this game between the Sooners and Bama, and the fact that Bama, a school that people have doubted and should they have got it in over some other schools, they did win and they put up points and they got a big win in the SEC once again. So you have to give credit to Bama on that front.
Yeah, 100%. I don't I don't think we have to retract the idea that maybe Notre Dame should have been in instead of Alabama. That's to me, that's Monday quarterbacking, but that it was a very compelling game. At first, I thought we were going for a horrible route,
Mhm.
17-0. Like it was looking like Alabama was about to, I mean, yeah, it was looking really bad. And then they ended up coming back. A comeback is always going to be more interesting than anything else you can do in any sport, really. So they had the big comeback. The defense of Oklahoma, like you said, falling 34 points on, like that's unheard of. That was a good defense. And like their offense had struggles. They had injuries and stuff this year. The consistent part of Oklahoma was always its defense. So
Mhm.
the fact that the defense is really, I mean, yeah, obviously that one pick was a bit of that was atrocious. That one pick that really turned the game around. I don't know. Mateer needs to maybe I don't like to do conspiracies, but there was nobody from his team in that general area. And so I don't know who he was throwing to. And then he like stutter stepped instead of going for the tackle to let that kid score. So there might be something more to that, and I'll leave it at that. But no, in all seriousness, it was really truly Oklahoma's game to lose, which again makes sense when
Yeah.
you're by 17. And then they did lose. Then they did lose. Alabama was able to capitalize on every single mistake Oklahoma made. Oklahoma made a ton. In addition to that pick, that botched punt. Somehow you messed up punting the ball. I don't even know how you do that. And I say that,
Barrier for
understand.
kickers in both college and the pros.
Right. And it's like, listen, I know I'm not a pro athlete or anything like that, but I genuinely don't know how you could mess that up. But they did it. And so, yes, credit where it's due to Alabama. They absolutely capitalized. Do I think that they should have been in over Notre Dame? No, but they did win. And you know what? End of the day, if they win at the Rose Bowl, they're going to be in the semifinals, and no one's gonna remember that maybe Notre Dame had a better case before the game started. There's a reason we have playoff games. It's because you have to see the teams play to determine who's got it and who doesn't. Alabama has clearly still got it. They've still got some life in that team, and they want to make a national championship.
Could have said any better. The only thing which we'll talk about for years to come, just bring these games closer together. Because I really think almost about a month apart affected these two teams playing each other to have a battle of the mid. And
Yeah.
I'm talking about the University of Miami, the U taking on Texas A&M. The University of Miami wins by a score of 10-3 over A&M. It was definitely a defensive battle. The game was low scoring, a slugfest dominated by defense, with both teams struggling to find any offensive rhythm. Carson Beck threw a modest numbers and managed the game well. And the key game was the running back, Mark Fletcher Jr., racked up
Yes.
172 yards on 17 carries, wearing down the A&M defense and setting up the decisive score. Malachi Tony scored the lone touchdown of the game and also contributed in the return game as well. The turning points that were big was Miami missing multiple field goals early, and A&M also squandering chances with a blocked kick and other turnovers. A late interception by Texas A&M's thrown by Marcel Reed, sealed their fate in the end zone and ended the game ultimately at a point where they were only 5 yards away from tying the game, and they missed on 3 of them, including that one throw that was going to be a catch. Looked like he got a concussion out of it and dropped the ball. And then, yeah, Marcel Reed throwing that interception at the end caused the loss for Texas A&M. Miami advances to take on Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl this year. Also, New
Easily.
Year's Day, they'll be playing at the Cotton Bowl for the playoff game. And a big milestone for Miami, honestly, for their victory, getting a playoff win. And yeah, though I do think the defense has to get credit, I do think it was more of offense not showing up, especially at Texas A&M. I feel kind of silly giving them so much support this year, only to blow it against Texas, the University of Texas, And then this game that was just sloppy, and they didn't look like they were ready to play in front of their home crowd. And especially some of the decision making by Reed was questionable. And I think it's fair to say we watch a lot of football and really see the difference between the pros and college teams. I just don't think some pro quarterbacks, even some backups, would have made some of the decisions Marcel Reed was doing, throwing into coverage, not only at that get in the final drive, but throughout the game. Couldn't get a rhythm going, no running game whatsoever for A&M as well. A very disappointing loss. I think these last two losses for A&M have to be the most disappointing all college football because they had so much momentum, looked so dominant. Were beating teams they needed to, hanging in the SEC, almost having a perfect record themselves, and then just these two losses really, really, really detrimented things. I feel.
Yeah, I mean,
I think, and if anything, just before you go, I think this is more of a Texas A&M loss than a Miami win.
oh, 100%. And I mean, we've talked about the A&M offense a lot this year because I've been high on A&M this year, as you know. And their offense, like we've said it again a million times, they have an explosive offense. They just score. They score so often, and very similar to Oklahoma, although this was a far greater example of it. The thing that they're the best at, it just was not there at all. Like I would have I by the end of that game, by the fourth quarter of that game, I just wanted whatever team could score an actual touchdown to win. Like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even care who won the game. I just wanted somebody to get a touchdown. And the fact that I'm saying that in a Power Four game is crazy, but the fact that I'm saying that in a Texas A&M game is
Yeah.
almost unheard of this season. Because if there's one thing they did right every time, it was score.
Yep.
Like they were very good scorers. And to your point about Marcel Reed, this was not just a bad game. Like there are bad games. The loss to Texas, bad game, but shit happens, to put it bluntly, right? This was like, I don't know how old Reed is. I actually don't remember. But if he's got any more eligibility, he might want to stay because if I'm watching him and deciding where I want to take him, I'm real nervous about his decision making right now. It was bad. He played like a kid, which he is, and I understand he's a kid, but like he's a kid who's looking to potentially jump into the NFL, and he did not look ready for that particular upgrade yesterday. I mean, even Carson Beck, who had a pretty mid game, took care of the ball better, and Carson Beck is nothing special. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
By the way,
Carson Beck.
Marcel Reed's a
Yeah.
sophomore at the moment.
Sorry. Go ahead.
He's a sophomore right now.
Okay. Okay. Then yeah, he definitely needs to say because, but like yeah, Carson Beck is as like middle of the road as you can get in terms of a quarterback. And the fact that even in a horrible offensive game where both offenses were truly, truly not doing well, he still took care of the ball better. And you saw it with the fact that, yeah, they missed 3 field goals, which is, you know, insane, by the way. But they had the opportunity for many field goals. Like A&M only got close to being able to kick one once because they kept turning the ball over.
Yep. And yeah, you play stupid games, win stupid prizes, and in this case, the stupid prize is going home early for A&M.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the group of 5 games. Let's talk about the games individually. Then I'll ask the big question: if the group of 5 schools should even be involved in this tournament.
Yeah.
So first, we got the University of Mississippi take on Tulane University. Ole Miss wins by a score of 41-10. Ole Miss controlled the game from start to finish, jumping out to a quick lead and never looking back. There was a balanced attack through for the Rebels. The offense was efficient, featuring a strong passing game and productive rushing. Despite Tulane moving the ball for decent yardage, they had three turnovers and red zone struggles that kept them from staying competitive. And Ole Miss just took care of business. They're now 11-3. They're going to take on Georgia at the Sugar Bowl this year. And that's going to be an intriguing matchup. They played each other earlier this year. Now, just obviously with the new coach after the whole
Lane
Um,
Kiffin deal.
Lane Kiffin deal, but all Ole Miss, no Tulane. That's really all I have with this one game, Ryan. Tulane didn't stand a chance despite being a conference champion and having an interesting story throughout. Um, I think a lot of people, spoiler, thought JMU couldn't hang, and at least JMU was able to cover and actually scored a lot in this game, but
Yeah.
Tulane didn't look like they belonged. They were
No,
the
that's
looked like they thought JMU was going to be the team that least likely were to belong. It wound up being Tulane, the conference champion, who looks like they didn't belong.
yeah. So I'll be honest. And I was high on Tulane, and Tulane did move the ball, like we said, and I that wasn't surprising to me. But their defense was simply not ready. Like the Tulane defense was not ready to play against an SEC team, and I don't say that lightly because I don't believe in a lot of the hype, as you know, man.
Mhm.
But it was just true. Like, and it was I think maybe the third play of the game they had I don't know who it was. It looked like it was a wideout or a tight end running through guys, and he was like three times their size. And I was like, this is gonna be a nightmare. If the Tulane offense isn't able to keep parity, then this is gonna be a nightmare. And that's what it ended up being. Tulane's offense did I think what it was expected to do, but they stopped less than thing. And yeah, Ole Miss doesn't seem that Lane Kiffin was a particularly necessary part of that team. They looked great. Really, they did.
Exactly,
You
dude.
know?
And
Yeah.
why don't we now switch it up to talk about the other group of five game? That is James Madison University taking on the University of Oregon for the final college football game in the first round. Oregon wins by a score of 51-34. Dante Moore was electric for Oregon, throwing 4 touchdown passes and scoring another on the ground. Oregon jumped ahead early, built a big lead in the first half, and never relinquished it. JMU was able to have some late scoring in the second half, but wasn't able to overcome the Oregon firepower that offense was. Now Oregon will take on Texas Tech, and they will be playing each other in the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day. And give credit to JMU not folding, still scoring, pushing. Actually had a decent running game themselves in this game, but it
Yep.
was just the defense. I mean, give credit JMU coming from the Sun Belt to score 34 points against a Big Ten team, a very good Big Ten team, a very good program, and heck, maybe I don't want to talk about too many moral victories on these shows, but it really was a moral victory for James
Yeah.
Madison, and they played the best, way better than Tulane did. They actually covered the spread themselves. So if you pick Oregon, you lost.
Yep.
And JMU, give some respect to them. And before we ask the broad question, how do you feel about this game in particular, especially now being in Virginia?
Oh yeah, I was absolutely pro JMU. I wanted this upset for a number of reasons. We'll get into a lot of that too. But I will say, if you watch the score of the game and just the score of the game, which is how most of the people who talk about this stuff on Twitter watch football, they're going to sit there and say JMU had a late comeback on an Oregon team that was tired and was basically just coasting to save. No, that is not what happened. JMU was consistently doing what it needed to do, and then by the end of the game, perhaps because there were people tired, they started to really catch up. But there was a quote or something from one of the, I forget what it was, but usually there's they'd asked the player like, what is the locker room like? You're going to the Orange Bowl, and they said usually after a win like this at home, there's a lot of celebrating, music playing in the locker room, and they're like, none of that was the case last night, and I think that is because, to be honest with you, they bought the narrative that was put out there about JMU. And if that narrative about JMU is true, that they specifically had no business in this playoff, then frankly, Oregon is fucked in the Orange Bowl. If JMU is really that much worse than these other teams, and they were able to do this to Oregon, cover the spread, that they were able to play the whole time, Oregon had to play the whole time. It's like they're screwed. Texas Tech will run circles around Oregon if that's really the case. Now, I don't think it is, but I can see why if you're a big program like this and you watched Ole Miss absolutely desecrate Tulane, right? And
Yep.
you did not do that. And to pretend that Oregon did that to JMU is just wrong. They didn't do that. It was a high scoring game. It was the highest scoring game of the entire college football playoff.
Yeah, right.
JMU scored more than, well, not Ole Miss, but scored more than what's it called? Than Alabama and Miami, who both won their games. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like JMU had a very, very decent showing. And that is a moral victory. It's not enough of a moral victory, as we'll talk about in the next segment, but it was a moral victory. I was happy. I was excited for that game. I turned off the Tulane game in disgust. I did not do that with JMU. And again, I watched all of some. I forced myself to watch all of the Miami game because I was like, surely it's going to get good, and it never did. So I'm glad that I watched the JMU game because, again, outside of Oklahoma and Alabama, that was the only game worth watching. And even if you knew the outcome of that game, that had the most stakes, the most storyline, and uh, frankly, JMU is the only Group 5 team in the entire country who benefited from this playoff, and we'll talk about that in the next segment.
So good transition there, Ryan. So to put a bow on this podcast, and just a reminder again, we'll be back talking college football January 4th
Yeah,
for a reaction to the the second round of the college football playoff, the quarterfinals to be more specific. But
yeah.
let's ask the broad question: should the group of 5 schools be in it after this weekend?
I mean, my answer is and remains yes. Um, the first thing they do need to do is fix the ACC tiebreaker. um, I don't know that I'll get much support on the idea that there should be two of them in this ever again
Mm-hmm.
because but so here's the thing, like, and I said that JMU is the only Group 5 school to get anything out of this, and the reason I say that is really because for at least for JMU, they became the sentimental favorites, in my opinion, of a very large section of college football. Certainly, the entirety of the Group of 5 fan base. JMU got more investment than they've ever had from you know from the media, from donors, from fans online. So that was great, and it's almost to the point why you do this. They created a real story and a real program changer. I bet you JMU's can get more money this next season or next off season than
Definitely.
they've ever seen, and it's because they were able to take their ball and like run with it. They got one opportunity that they took and they didn't slow down and they just ran it till the brakes came off. And to me, that's what this is about for the Group of 5 schools. I know not everyone agrees, um, but when you look at how this went out, let's say we didn't put JMU in. Let's say we put Duke in. Do we really want to see Duke get blown out by Oregon? Is that really better?
I think the country
Because
would love to see that as a whole, but I know what you're saying.
but I mean,
You can hang or
realistically, the
not.
end is the same, right? Like, let's just be honest. No matter who went up against Oregon in that round, they were going to lose. I do not believe Texas was going to beat Oregon. I don't believe BYU was going to beat Oregon. Like, the only team, and I do mean this, and I've been, jaw jacking with Notre Dame people on Twitter for like 3 weeks now. The only team that had any sort of, case here, in my opinion, was Notre Dame. I think if Notre Dame had been in instead of, well, frankly, instead of any of those teams, right? So if it had replaced any of the teams that lost in the playoff first round, it would have been better games. And they also probably would have won. I believe Notre Dame would have beat Alabama. I believe Notre Dame certainly would have beaten Miami in the second play. And I understand they lost the first time, but I think Notre Dame would have won this time. They would have beaten Oregon, and they probably would have even beaten Ole Miss. Ole Miss would probably have been the best game of the four. And so I get it for that case. But there's no one who can tell me with a straight face who's not paid by ESPN that Texas, BYU, I don't even know who else is down there, Vanderbilt, would have done better and would have won any of these games. They wouldn't have won these games. They would have lost to the winner of each of these games. So my question is, why do I need to see the same 12 teams play each other every year in the postseason, right? They're going to win and lose the exact same way they always do, which is, there'll be the same 12 teams, then the same 6 teams, then the same 4 teams, and then some combination of those same 4 teams are going to play in the championship every year, right? If we're doing that, let's just go back to the 4 team.
Yeah,
Why?
man.
Like, why would we do a whole playoff to get to the fact that we're going to see Georgia or Ohio State
Right.
or Alabama and then one other team every year? Why not just do the 4 team again? Like, that to me,
I'm sure you'll be able to get a lot of people pushing on that very, very soon. But
but I don't want the 4 team, to be clear. I think that would be a mistake. This is
yeah,
better than the 4 team, but what they want to build is just a longer version of the 4 team. So they want to just basically make more money and then end up where they were anyway.
hey, I think you will be able to have a solution on that very soon over time, and we'll be pushing on that and talking about that for the near future. But Ryan, excellent job as always. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. First round of the college football playoff in the books. We'll see you on January 4th, specifically in college football, to discuss the quarterfinals.
Yep.
Back here, also available for you, a Week 16 recap of the NFL season. And then on Christmas Eve, our final show, our final tweet cap of the year, the tweet cap, the 2025 timeline, and talk about the big stories across sports, news, entertainment, and culture. Great work, Ryan. We'll see you all very soon.
All right, see ya, and have a happy holidays, everybody.
Oh, yes. Most importantly, happy holidays. See ya.